Thank you for joining us. We are continuing to follow the breaking news. We have confirmed that FBI Director James Comey has been fired. Just 3 months ago, this was the man that Donald Trump blew a kiss at and said he's become more famous than me. And now today, by some accounts, unexpectedly, according to some FBI officials, are saying that this comes as a bit of a surprise to the FBI. But what we do know, and officially, is that the fact that this did come down from a memo from Attorney General Jeff Sessions. It was also the exact wording here, the statement from the press secretary's office saying that Comey has been terminated and removed from office. President Trump acted based on the clear recommendations of both Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein and Attorney General Jeff Sessions. I want to go to our Justice reporter Paula Reid, who covers the Justice Department for us. Paula, what more can you tell us about this apparent memo to the White House from the Justice Department?
Well, Rena, this is quite shocking because it's very rare. It's really only happened one time in history where the president has fired the director of the FBI. The head of the FBI gets a 10-year term so that there can be continuity and that politics don't interfere with the leadership at the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Some people thought that later on this year, when the Department of Justice watchdog issues a report on how Comey handled the Hillary Clinton email matter, that could potentially be a time when he could be fired. There could have been evidence presented there that would have justified a firing. But Rena, this letter is very cryptic from the Department of Justice. It is not clear what the Deputy Attorney General is referring to, or the Attorney General is referring to, when they say they no longer believe that he can provide leadership at the FBI.
Paul, was there any sense, you walk the halls of the Justice Department, you've got sources at the Justice Department, did anybody see this coming, that this memo from Sessions and that there was a lack of confidence in James Comey?
Not this week. I will tell you that when President Trump took office, when it became more clear that the Russia investigation was going to continue, it would aggravate the White House, people suggested that it was possible that Trump could fire Comey, but that he wouldn't do so without cause, and that he would probably wait for that watchdog report, which would give him an opening and enough fodder to justify a firing. But Rena, in the past 10 days, no one has suddenly suggested that the FBI director had fallen out of favor, and absolutely no one had suggested that his job was in jeopardy.
Paul, I know this news is just breaking and you may not have the answer to this, but is there any sense of who the president might choose to nominate? Are there any rumblings if Comey were to leave? This is the list.
The list that I have heard is just one name, and this is just coming from people inside the Department of Justice, not with knowledge. This was purely a hypothetical, and the name that was floated was Rudy Giuliani. The problem is that whoever's put into this office, people are going to ask the question, well, can you objectively investigate cases, particularly the Russia investigation, right? And there are concerns that someone like Rudy Giuliani or one of the president's other associates may be beholden to the White House to be able to be fair and objective in these cases.
Yeah, many people thought he might have a position in his cabinet. That didn't quite pan out. And as you mentioned, the independence of the FBI, many people are wondering, he just fired the man who is now tasked with overseeing whether he has links to Russia businesses. Where do you see that investigation going now, Paula?
Well, even more than ever, there's going to be calls for a special prosecutor. There were so many questions about whether or not the Department of Justice, so the lawyers, Attorney General Sessions, the new Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, whether or not they could objectively investigate the White House, particularly when the Attorney General had to recuse himself for failing to disclose meetings he had with the Russian ambassador. Now that the president, on the Attorney General's recommendation, has fired the head of the FBI, Rena, it's going to be very difficult to convince people that this investigation is being done fairly and impartially unless they appoint a special prosecutor, special investigators, and take the whole thing away from the FBI and the larger Department of Justice.
It's hard to ignore, Paula. Just a few hours ago, we every afternoon cover the White House briefing live, and I was struck by Sean Spicer, the White House press secretary, saying when asked about whether President Trump had confidence in FBI Director Comey, his exact words were, "I have no reason to believe." And then he paused and he said, "I haven't asked him." Was there a sense that this was a surprise at the FBI and the Justice Department?
Well, clearly people if you picture it, the FBI and the Department of Justice, they're right across the street from each other. And clearly people at the Department of Justice, main justice as we call it, where the Attorney General is, clearly they knew something was up because the Attorney General signed a letter, as did the Deputy Attorney General, signing off on this, endorsing this. But whether or not people at the FBI knew, that was not clear. Based on my reporting, talking to sources, it doesn't appear that anyone saw this coming. And there's been no event that we are aware of that would have encouraged this kind of action. And Rena, I just have to underscore, this is almost unprecedented. Only one other FBI director was fired. Under President Clinton, he fired an FBI director, but that's because he was inappropriately using government funds.
And we know that this position you serve, as many people in former cabinets like to say, at the pleasure of the president. The president has the right to fire their FBI director. Paula, talk to me about the circumstances right now. We do know that there was some talk about these Clinton emails and that they had to, Comey had to come forward, is planning on coming forward as well this week on the Hill, retracting some of what he said. Can you walk us through those Clinton emails, and do you think that has something to do with this firing at all?
Marina, I would be very surprised if the FBI director's misstatements about the process Huma Abedin went through to inadvertently transfer those emails to Anthony Weiner's computer, if that particular technical detail was what caused him to be fired. I've covered the Hillary Clinton email investigation for 18 months. There's a lot of inaccuracies. There's been a lot of missteps, misspeaking. This really just does not rise to the level of an offense that would cause you to fire the director of the FBI. The FBI is even trying to correct what he said about Huma Abedin and how those emails got on Anthony Weiner's laptop. Serena, it is unclear right now what specifically has prompted the president to take this action. It would not appear at this point that it is related to the Hillary Clinton email investigation.
Paula, how have administrations in the past managed to try and keep the FBI director position independent, and as well as the Department of Justice, the Attorney General position, when there was this whole situation with Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton and that plane and the conversations that were happening? How have they managed to remain their independence? It's an institution that many look at as having to maintain that independence to keep on track with their cases that they're pushing forward.
You're absolutely right, and it's hard to maintain that independence when you technically report and serve at the pleasure of the president. But one of the key ways the architects created this to try to be impartial was to create a 10-year term. For FBI Director Comey, he is a Republican. He has served in Republican and Democratic administrations. He has been a Deputy Attorney General at the Department of Justice. He's been a U.S. Attorney. He served in many different capacities across many different administrations. The idea was that he would continue to serve Democratic and Republican presidents for another 6 years. That, Rena, is one of the most important ways they try to preserve the integrity and the impartiality of the FBI. It's not a cabinet position. And for the president to take this drastic step, presumably there should be some fairly significant, some sort of very significant action. Now, Rena, I'm going to have to hop off of you because I have some sources calling me.
Of course,
Hopefully
Paula.
I can get some more information, and you'll be the first one to hear it.
We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us, Paula. I want to bring in Steve Chaggaris, our CBS News political director, who joins me by Skype. Steve, if you're keeping track at home, National Security Advisor was fired, stepped down, acting Attorney General, and now the FBI director was fired. What does this mean for the Trump administration?
Well, it's cleaning house, right? And it's really interesting because we're still waiting for detail about what the reasoning behind all this was. And in the case of Comey, it's very interesting because both sides of the aisle had problems with James Comey, and there are a lot of questions for President Trump as to why he didn't act sooner on the Comey thing, because he's been very critical of him. He had said as recently as a month ago that he had confidence in FBI Director Comey, and it was interesting because Sean Spicer was asked about it today, and he wouldn't answer the question. He said he hadn't talked to the president recently about it, especially in light of what happened this week in terms of what Comey said on Capitol Hill about the Hillary Clinton investigation and getting some facts wrong in that situation. So it's interesting. Republicans, especially President Trump, were not always very happy with Comey, and Democrats especially, because of what had happened at the end of the presidential campaign and him reopening the investigation into the Clinton email situation. They haven't been happy with Comey. So it's very interesting. But, there's a lot of questions being raised now about the President Trump doing this, mainly because there's an open FBI investigation into the Russian meddling in the election, and that involves the Trump administration. So a lot of questions right now.
Steve, you mentioned the Russia meddling on the Senate floor not just a short time ago. Senator Dick Durbin immediately questions the removal of Comey as reining in on the FBI Russia probe. How do you think that's going to play into all of this?
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting. I think, you're going to hear people on the Intelligence Committee say this doesn't affect the probe in the sense that, the FBI investigation is going to continue. The Senate is doing their own separate investigation, as is the House. So they're going to continue on their tracks of the investigation. But this is total political grist for Democrats who are going to say, this looks terrible. There's got to be something going on here. President Trump had to have known what's going on in this investigation, and this is a massacre situation, so similar to the Saturday Night Massacre, what happened under President Nixon. And so they're going to use this, they're going to fan the flames and try to throw this back at Donald Trump and the Trump administration and say, there's something up here and we got to get to the bottom of it, so we'll see.
So it says the statement from the press secretary that the FBI is one of our nation's most cherished and respected institutions, and today will mark a new beginning for our crown jewel of law enforcement. Steve, what's the sense of what goes into finding a new replacement for the FBI director?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's been a while since they replaced the FBI director. Comey came on in 2013. That's a 10-year position, and prior to that, it was somebody who'd been there for a long time. And so it's going to be somebody who has the trust of President Trump. This is an appointment by the president. This is and so it's somebody that's going to have the trust of him and Jeff Sessions. So it's going to be interesting to see where they look for this person. Probably, who knows? Maybe it'll be somebody within the FBI currently, somebody who is deep into law enforcement. But the question is what does this person bring to the table? How is this person going to serve this the FBI in the sense that there is an open investigation into the Trump administration, and there are going to be a lot of questions as to this person's impartiality in terms of how they deal with that investigation moving forward. And I think whoever President Trump picks for this position is going to have to answer a lot of questions, especially from Democrats who are going to be highly suspicious of what President Trump is doing here.
Steve, there was a sense after the elections people were wondering whether or not Trump would keep on FBI Director James Comey. Is there a sense that something changed? Any way of understanding the tea leaves in Washington this afternoon?
It's hard. It's just hard to tell. It's really, we don't have any detail on what happened here. All we know is that he was acting under the recommendation of the Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General. And we're really anxious to find out what exactly happened here, because again, as recently as a few weeks ago, President Trump said he still had confidence in James Comey in this position. Now, could it have been the last straw? Could it have been this testimony that he gave this week to a congressional hearing in which he flubbed the details about the Hillary Clinton investigation? Perhaps that was the last straw, but I have a feeling there's probably a lot more here. We're waiting to hear from the White House to hear what their side of the story on this is. But there are a lot of questions unanswered as to why this happened today, happened late in the day today and by paper statement, and we'll, I think, get more as the day goes on.
We're hearing from Senator Dianne Feinstein, who's just sent out a statement saying President Trump called me at 5:30 p.m. and indicated he would be removing Director Comey, saying the FBI needed a change. How would this affect, potentially, Steve, the investigation looking into Trump that Congress is trying to push forward, that Lindsey Graham, Senator Lindsey Graham, a Republican, was also trying to push forward as well?
Yeah, so again, there are three investigations going on. There's one by the FBI, and there's one in each the House and the Senate. And I think that these are going to continue on their separate tracks. I think what's going to be interesting, though, as I mentioned earlier, is whoever President Trump picks to replace Comey, how are they going to handle the current FBI investigation? And will that be compromised at all by the person that he picks? You're going to hear a lot of Democrats asking a lot of questions about the choice that Trump makes in terms of who he picks to replace Comey, because the question is, can this person be impartial in looking into the Trump administration? There are already questions being raised by Democrats about why Comey got fired. Some are suggesting that this is a political reason because this man is investigating President Trump. Now, we are waiting to hear what the real reasons are, or what the real reasons are. I can't imagine the White House is going to say, yes, we fired him because he's investigating the White House. But this is all going to. I think what you're going to hear from members of Congress is that these investigations are going to continue on their separate tracks, get to the bottom of what they want to get to the bottom of, and it's not really going to influence directly what is going on in each of the congressional investigations.